Hey folks, Wrong Gamgee here. I just want to briefly announce that the Quick and Dirty RPG system is now available on DriveThruRPG for $4.99. That's almost a 40% price reduction from its original retail price of $8, which makes it easier for you to get a copy of my labor of love to the RPG hobby in your preferred devices. Also, don't forget to grab a copy of the Quick and Dirty character sheets and other profiles at a price of pay what you want. The links to both products are in the description. Now, onto the video. Greetings folks, this is Wrong Gamgee, and welcome to Quick and Dirty Roleplaying. This video is part 5 of my discussion of how the EZD6 tabletop roleplaying game is maximized for playability. If you're interested in my analysis of the core mechanics, combat, the rules for magic and miracles, character creation, and monster design, go check out the previous parts of this series, as I will talk about the Game Master chapter in this video. The chapter starts off with comic DM Scotty giving an overall view of what the rabble-rouser's role entails. And it reads, in EZD6, the Game Master is known as the rabble-rouser. Take this name to heart, serving as the chief lunatic, the stirrer of pots, and generally the craziest person at the table. Celebrate your players, lift them up, move the spotlight around, and always prize fun over the rules. In short, your job is to rouse the rabble. Here's my takeaway on the text. The rabble-rouser, by necessity, has to be able to move the players emotionally in order to be effective. To do that most effectively, keep the focus on the players and give them positive reinforcement when they push and shove their way through the game world, since they're called pushers and shovers. Rousing the rabble not only refers to rousing the players, but to rouse the NPCs and the environment, kind of like an ocean wave. You go at the wave and let it ride, or you go against the wave and get smashed. So don't go against the wave of facilitating fun for the sake of rules fidelity. In a sense, my impression is that the intention is to have a sort of rock concert vibe to an EZD6 session, which is quite fitting of the fast-moving game of fantasy mayhem tagline in the front cover. I unfortunately don't have that version of the physical book. I have this one that doesn't have it. The following page has a declaration for players to turn back now. This is a sentiment that I don't agree with. I think players should know what the job of the rabble-rouser entails so that they can learn what goes on behind the scenes and to get an appreciation for the beating heart of the game. It's tremendously important to learn how this chapter is helping the rabble-rouser provide as much fun and as exciting of a game session as possible for you, the players. Also, by knowing what goes on with the rabble-rousing role, the players have a better idea on how to work with the rabble-rouser to facilitate a fun session, and a big part of that is being a team player as opposed to selfishly trying to win the game, or even worse, be a one-upper. If anything, the monsters chapter should have the players turn back now declaration so that they don't metagame with the monster information presented there. Under the heading of what makes a good game, the following tips are included. Concentrate on telling a good story by setting up situations so that the players decide on how to resolve them. Include moral choices to make for a dramatic story. Give out the barest details when introducing a new area so that the players can ask questions or notice things specific to their characters' areas of expertise. Make lovable NPCs as well as villains to hate. Don't have the players roll for everything. Karma makes for an exciting player choice. The hero die is not just second-class karma. The rules are nearly invisible until important choices are to be made, and confirming the crit. So concentrating on telling a good story by setting up situations that the players decide on how to resolve them allows for stories to emerge from player choices and dice roll results, rather than having the players be part of a prescripted roller coaster ride. When a player's choice changes how the narrative unfolds, that creates an impactful and memorable experience, and also allows and also immerses that player into the game world. To deny this to the player would be akin to narratively castrating them. So let the game world be a place where the players can change it through their choices. To include moral choices so as to make for a dramatic story evolves the game from merely a war game to something on a grander scale. Most of us think of ourselves as moral creatures, even when we do heinous shit, and justify it with some form of moral reasoning. Moral choices are never easy to make, or if they are, always come at a cost, whether in the short term or the long term. Since these choices are tremendously value driven, they tend to affect us more and stick with us longer than a tactical choice on a battlefield. This is truly the stuff that makes tabletop role-playing games worth playing again and again, in my opinion. When you give up the barest details when introducing a new area to the group, I think this advice needs to be tempered with the caveat of don't give out so little details that the players had to ask questions like, what do I see? Or some other fundamental perceptive detail. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, the paragraph of description is necessary if that's what's required for what characters perceive in the new area. I would also add to conclude the description by asking the players, what do you do? To put the spotlight back on them. Don't just give the scene away is definitely good advice, as these extra details should be extracted with effort on the player's part. Making lovable NPCs as well as villains to hate is a principle that pro wrestling is oftentimes great at employing. This reminds me of a line I heard in the show Heels, where one wrestler tells a newbie, your job in the ring is to make the crowd love you or to make the crowd love hating you. Any emotion is better than indifference in this regard, and the more intense the emotion, the better. And for advanced investment, which should be reserved for the most important NPCs, a mix of strong, contradictory emotions will lock the player's interest in that NPC. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, never let the line go slack. Speaking of emotional tugging, the karma mechanic is designed to do this in multiple ways. First off, karma provides a cushion against the frustration of failure by providing the players a way to not only pull them out of a tight spot in the future, but as a way to really kick ass when the time is right, such as with critical hits. Second, having karma causes the players to deliberate on when they should spend it, on when they should spend it, or when they should save it to bank 5 karma for that sweet hero die. The hero die is yet another emotion-tugging mechanic, as it allows players a chance to test their fate once again after a botched roll. Furthermore, hero dice can be used in circumstances where karma cannot, such as with spellcasting and miracle rolls. It seems that when it comes to when to use karma or when to use a hero die, it would probably be wise to spend the hero die when karma is insufficient or not possible to use, and to use karma when there's plenty of it or when the roll fails by merely 1 or 2 pips if possible. Dice rolls should be used for important choices, not for frivolous matters. This is a trap that I see time and time again. Dice rolls to notice details that can be discerned through deliberate attention. Dice rolls to see if you know something. Dice rolls to ask for simple favors, etc. Dice rolls made to see if characters can do basic things portray them as incompetent klutzes. Furthermore, these frivolous dice rolls slow down the game by taking the time to make the dice roll and by incorporating the outcome into the narrative in uninteresting ways. Just put the dice and the rolls away while the player is interacting with the NPCs in the environment in ways that don't require an important and uncertain determination to be made. Confirming a crit is one of the mechanically implemented highlights of EZD6. This is compounded by the fact that karma can be used to modify the dice to make crit confirmations happen more frequently. This all ties into how I mentioned in the first video about how the implementation of these mechanics together make them greater than the sum of their parts. And if I didn't mention that beforehand, I'm mentioning it now. A section that I wanted to touch upon that's found later on in the chapter is called Judgment over Rules. In this section, the idea is to keep the game fluid, fast-moving, and rulebook free. And to do so, use the 2 to 6 difficulty scale in order to arbitrate specific rulings. For example, it's one of the examples included in the book, a hero wants to hamstring an enraged ogre following the party that's trying to escape. Normally, the ogre's 2-hit number would be a 3, but since the hero is trying something particularly difficult, the rabble-rouser changes the 2-hit number in this instance to a 6, so that the ogre is too hamstrung to catch up to the party. EZD6 has no specific rules for tripping or called shots, so it relies on this quick eyeballing to handle fringe cases such as this. This is something that I'm a huge fan of, and it honors the original adage of tabletop role-playing games, which is you can try anything that is within your power to do so. Not if the rules say if the rules don't say you can do something, then you can't. Another section found later on that deserves mention here is asking players to roll anything but a 1. This is a technique that should be employed sparingly and in situations where there's a low chance of failure, but when failure does occur, the chances will be interesting for the rabble-rouser, while often terrible for the players, or their characters at least. Such situations include climbing a precarious scaffolding with many handholds that creaks and moans as they climb on it. Even though a 1 in 6 chance is a low chance of failure, it still happens often enough to be more anxiety-inducing than, say, 1 in 20. In time, asking players to roll anything but a 1 will make the players say, "Aw shit, here we go, no whammies, no whammies, no whammies." I'm sure DM Scotty would get that joke. There's also a section regarding playing with miniatures and terrain. I personally am not really a miniatures and terrain person when it comes to running game sessions, but the advice here comes from DM Scotty's decades of experience in the tabletop role-playing game hobby, so it's not advice that I'm going to dismiss simply because of my preferences. For all the logistical challenges and time required to store, transport, and set up miniatures and terrain, they definitely do help reduce the cognitive load on both the players and the rabble-rouser. And less cognitive load means more playability. Seeing a representation of where a character or object is in relation to everything else at any moment's notice beats describing it, oftentimes over and over again, any day of the week. Talking to the players about where they wish to go in the following session is not only helpful to determine what kind of terrain to prepare, but it also empowers the players to influence the direction of the campaign and takes some of that burden off of the rabble-rouser's shoulders, as they only have to prepare terrain for the next session. Generic terrain beats specifics on reusability and by letting the imagination fill in the details. Like with dice rolls, use terrain when such details play an important role in a particular conflict only. Otherwise, just use your imagination. Fantasy artwork online is a great resource. This is something that I employ in my sessions and is probably one of the biggest reasons why I should get myself a tablet. That, and as a way to have my PDFs with me without having to employ the Zoom function, just to read text. And, I've had the fortune of receiving a donation of the entire Descent Journeys into Dark board game set, so I've got plenty of miniatures and terrain at my disposal. I just need to get off my ass and make use of them. Next, there's a section titled "Will My Friends Want to Play EZD6?", where it suggests running a one-shot with EZD6 to see if players like the free-flowing, super-fast mechanics. And there's a sentiment expressed in it that I agree as well. And it's that many people don't know what they're missing until they try it. In order to help me with that endeavor, I've also acquired the EZD6 Book of Quests. Yeah, there we go. Book of Quests, which provide 18 quests that vary in scope and can be played either individually as one-shots or as a series leading to an epic finale. There are other sections in the GM chapter, or in the Rabble-Rousing chapter, regarding monsters that I've talked about in part 4 of the series, so I won't repeat it here. I'll touch upon long-term hero rewards and treasure in the next and final video of the series, as those two topics have a lot of overlap. If you like or dislike anything in this video, please give it a like or dislike and leave a comment, keeping it respectful and relevant. Subscribe if you want to support my channel, and if you really want to support my endeavors, head over to my Patreon and become a member. The link is in the description. Until then, folks, take care and play to find out what happens.